Story number 1. I came back to Dungannon in the spring of 1980. Though I can't tell you what really pulled me back there. I hadn't been home in almost 20 years. My folks were long gone. And whatever friends I'd had before Vietnam either moved off or disappeared into the same old hills we grew up in. But something about those ridges called to me after I got out, like a buried bone nagging at the back of a dog's mind. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Just packed up my beat-up Dodge, bought supplies, and drove until the roads thinned and the green got thick again. One found an old hunting cabin my uncle used to own, up a rutted path off Black Hollow Road. Roof still held, and the chimney hadn't crumbled yet. I patched it up enough to get by, hauled in a generator, ran a rain barrel, planted a small garden. I didn't want much, just quiet, just space. After years of noise and fire and waking up with someone else's blood on me, I needed silence. For a few weeks, it was fine. Mornings were simple. Brew coffee, check snares, read whatever paperbacks I had, clean guns I didn't need. Nights were worse. Sleep came slow, and when it did, it dragged dreams with that mangled jungle, missing limbs. That copper stink you never forget. But even that felt manageable until the fog started showing up. It wasn't normal fog. First night I saw it, I was on the porch drinking instant coffee out of a chipped tin mug. Round midnight, I noticed a red shimmer drifting through the trees. I thought it was brake lights at first, maybe someone turned around at the base of the hill, but no. Engine followed, and the light didn't flicker like a car would. It moved slow, like smoke and water. It didn't glow so much as pulse. I stared at it too long, and I swear I heard whispers underneath the crickets, like radio static half-tuned, just below the edge of hearing. I told myself it was nothing. I'd been alone too long, needed sleep, maybe too much caffeine. But the next night, it came again, and then again. Always just after dark, always floating low, slipping between trees like it was looking for something. I started locking the door, not that it would have stopped anything. I didn't sleep those nights. I sat in the corner with my back to the wall and a shotgun across my knees. Then the figures came. They weren't solid, at least not in the usual way. The first time I saw one, it was in the fog, standing at the tree line, not moving, just there, tall and lean, almost stretched out of shape, no face. The fog made it ripple, like heat above asphalt. It never stepped closer, but it didn't leave either. I blinked, and it was gone. I tried drinking it away, that didn't help. If anything, the fog got thicker, and the shadows multiplied. Every night they came, closer each time, like they were learning me, following the rhythm of my steps, watching how I moved. I stopped leaving the cabin at night. I barely stepped out in daylight either. I was losing grip. Then I met Marianne, or rather, she found me. I was halfway to town for supplies, nearly out of food, and half-starved from paranoia. I must have looked like a damn ghoul, dirty, eyes sunken, shaking from too many sleepless nights. I pulled over near a roadside stand, hoping they had eggs or maybe jerky, and there she was, mid-40s, maybe older, strong frame, hair wrapped in a scarf. She wore a faded tee that said, "Don't let the bastards get you down." She didn't flinch when she saw me, just looked me over and said, "You seen the fog?" I didn't answer, didn't have to. She saw it on me. "You're not the first," she said, like it was a weather report. She brought me to her place, small house nestled behind blackberry bramble, hidden unless you knew where to look. It smelled of earth and pine resin and something bitter I couldn't name. I expected a witch's hut. It wasn't that. It was clean, lived in, comfortable in the way only real people make homes. She was an herbalist, grew her own medicine, knew the old ways, Appalachian folk stuff, Cherokee traditions, and bits of something older that had no name. She made me tea that tasted like dirt and lemon rind, told me to drink it and not ask what was in it. I drank. It settled something in me, dulled the buzzing just enough. Then she started asking questions. Not about the war, though I could tell she knew that part, but about the fog, about the things I saw. She said it wasn't just in my head, said something in that land had turned rotten, and I wasn't just haunted by my past, I was being fed on something she called a spiritual parasite, like a leech that didn't need flesh, just pain and memory and fear. She said they used to call it the hunger in the red, Said it shows up where the land's been poisoned not just with blood, but with things humans weren't meant to bury. Chemicals, secrets, suffering. I didn't believe her, not entirely. But I also didn't leave. I spent that night in her guest room, first good sleep I'd had in weeks. The next day, she took me to the ridge behind her house where the old creek used to run clean. Now it was just a slick, brackish trickle. The trees around it were wrong, branches warped, bark split like skin, frogs with missing eyes, mushrooms that bled tar when cut. The air smelled off, like burnt plastic under pine needles. "See that?" she said, pointing at the base of the slope. "That's where they dumped it." I asked who. "Agricor." She spat. "Back in '72, said it was fertilizer runoff. Bullshit. They were testing some neuro agent they cooked up for. NAM, illegal as hell. They buried the drums when the EPA sniffed around. But they never took responsibility." I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. Of course it was military. Of course it was linked to war. Everything I'd tried to leave behind was sunk into this place, leaking into the roots. She said the fog was a side effect, something awakened by the chemicals. The parasite just latched on because I was soft meat, traumatized, easy feeding. I asked if she could stop it. She said no, but she could dull its hold. She gave me a poultice to burn, instructions for a cleansing ritual, and a warning not to stay too long in the red. "It'll make you part of it," she said. I did what she told me. For a few days, it worked. The fog stayed away. The figures didn't come. I even managed to sleep with the windows open again. Then I got cocky. Thought maybe it was done with me. Thought maybe Marion had scared it off. That's when it came inside. I woke up to a humming low, deep like a plane far overhead, but it wasn't outside. It was in my teeth, my bones. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't move right. The fog had poured in through the chimney, slipping around the blankets, thick in the air like syrup, and in it, shapes dozens now, all tall and wrong and watching. One stepped forward. I saw my own face on it, my war face. Camouflage, black, paint, eyes dead. It raised a hand and pointed to my chest. Then I was somewhere else. I was back in Fubai, only it was twisted. Trees blood red. The sun pulsed like a wound. I heard screaming my squad, the ones who never came home, except they were speaking backward, in voices that weren't theirs. I dropped to my knees. I begged for it to stop. It didn't. When I came to, I was 10 miles from my cabin, naked, covered in red mud, my hands torn up like I'd been digging. I don't remember walking. I don't remember anything but the fog. Marion found me. She didn't scold me, just wrapped me in a blanket, held me until I stopped shaking. "I can't fix this," she whispered. "You have to leave." But I didn't. I couldn't. Something in me had already changed. The cabin was still there, but it wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the red. That was the last time I saw her. I told her thank you. She cried when I left. I think she knew what would happen. I stayed one more night, burned every herb she gave me, drank what was left of her teas, sat on the porch with my shotgun and waited for the fog. It came. I don't remember the rest. They say hikers still see red mist curling through the hollows round Black Hollow. Some swear they've lost hours up there or find scratches on their legs they can't explain. A couple even vanished altogether. Nobody's blamed Agricor. Nobody's dug up the drums. And me, I'm part of it now. I can feel it. Some nights, when the fog gets thick and the wind is wrong, I think I see through the trees. I watch from the red. I remember who I was, but it doesn't matter anymore. The hunger's never full. Story number 2. When the letter came from the attorney's office in Elkins, I almost threw it out. I figured it was junk mail or one of those probate scams. But then I saw the name Eleanor Waverly. I hadn't thought of her in years. My great-aunt, or maybe great-great, I never kept it straight. She'd lived in some cabin out in the West Virginia mountains. No husband, no kids, just stories. My mother used to call her the family ghost. I only met her once, at a funeral when I was maybe 6. She smelled like mothballs and soil. But apparently, she left me something. A deed, a key, in a cabin. After the divorce, after everything fell apart in Pittsburgh, I wasn't in a place to ignore free property. My ex had the house. I had a 10-year-old daughter, a busted credit score, and a job that didn't pay enough to live near decent schools. So we packed what we had into the Subaru and drove south. The cabin was more house than I expected. Not modern, not comfortable, but solid, tucked on a wooded slope outside Elkins. It had been empty for years, but there was no mold, no rot, just dust and creaking floors and the kind of silence that hums if you listen too long. I scrubbed, patched up some wiring, got the water running, figured we'd stay 6 months, get on our feet, move back to civilization. Mia took to the place faster than I did. She loved the woods. Every afternoon, she'd be out there, poking around trees, naming moss patches, collecting rocks. The first time she mentioned her tree friend, I didn't think anything of it. Kids make things up. Imaginary friends are normal, especially after upheaval. I was honestly relieved she was adapting. He doesn't have a name, she told me over breakfast one morning. He just whispers. Whispers what? She shrugged. Warnings. I laughed. Warnings about what? That something's buried under the roots. I looked at her then, not because of what she said, but how she said it, calm, like she was just passing along a weather report. No fear, no excitement, just fact. I played along. What kind of roots? Big ones. By the back slope, the ones shaped like claws. The next day, I followed her out to the edge of the woods. She led me to a huge old oak with sprawling roots that jutted up like the knuckles of a giant hand. Mia crouched beside it and pointed to a patch of dirt. That's where he says not to dig. I ruffled her hair and told her I wouldn't, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I dreamt about Eleanor. In the dream, she was sitting in a chair in the kitchen. Only her eyes were hollow, and she was whispering, but I couldn't make out the words. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding like I'd run a mile. I didn't tell Mia. A few days later, she came inside with dirt under her fingernails and a strange look on her face. She said the tree was upset, that I needed to listen. I snapped a little, told her to stop with the games, that this wasn't the time for spooky nonsense. She just stared at me, quiet. Then she said, "He's not a game. He says it's not over." That night, I dug. I don't know what made me do it. Call it curiosity, call it dread. Maybe some part of me believed her, or maybe I just wanted to prove there was nothing there so we could move on. I waited until she was asleep, took a flashlight and a shovel out to the oak. The dirt was loamy, easy to move. I dug maybe a foot before I hit something hard. I stopped, brushed it off. Bone. I told myself it was an animal, a deer, maybe. I kept digging. More bones. A skull, small, too small. I dropped the shovel and fell backward. I don't remember standing. I don't remember walking back to the cabin. But I remember calling 911. My voice sounded thin, like someone else's. The police came. Then the sheriff's office. Then men in suits. They cordoned off the site. Mia watched from the window, expressionless. In the end, they found remains from at least 5 children. The first disappeared in 1973, the last in 1979, all from the area. All cold cases. They had suspects back then, vague ones, a drifter, a teacher, but nothing stuck. The town moved on. The parents grew old or left or drank themselves quiet. DNA confirmed the identities. The families were notified. The papers ran headlines, cold case breakthrough, cabin yields grim secrets, justice after 40 years. They called me brave for reporting it, said it was a good thing I found the bones, said I brought closure. But something didn't sit right. Not with me, not with Mia. She wouldn't sleep in her room after that. She said the tree was angry, that he didn't want the bones found, only remembered. She said I'd done it wrong. He just wanted to be heard. She told me. She started sleepwalking. I'd find her in the hallway, standing still, eyes open but empty. Once I caught her at the back door, hand on the knob, murmuring. I asked what she was doing. He says they're still under, she whispered. More, farther down. I took her to a child psychologist in town. They ran tests, said it was trauma, that she'd internalized the drama of the discovery, maybe. Formed an unhealthy attachment to the event. Gave me pamphlets. I wanted to believe them. But Mia changed. She stopped smiling, stopped eating the foods she used to love. She wouldn't play outside anymore, wouldn't go near the tree. She drew pictures, always trees with faces, roots like fingers, mouths full of dirt, and always children, buried, silent. I sold the cabin, dirt cheap. I didn't care. We moved to Charleston, bigger city, fresh start. I found a decent job at a credit union, got me into a new school, a clean apartment, new clothes, new books, new everything. She was quiet, but cooperative. I thought maybe we were past it. Then, about a month in, she came into my room late one night, stood at the foot of my bed. I heard him again. I sat up. Sweetheart, we're not there anymore. It was just a dream. She shook her head. He followed. I pulled her into bed with me, held her until she fell asleep. Her breathing was calm, but mine wasn't. She still hears him. Sometimes I catch her looking out the window like she's listening to something far off. She hums low, tuneless notes. Her drawings haven't changed. Once I tried to talk to her about it, to get her to open up. She only said, "He's everywhere, under all the trees, not just that one. He's part of them now." I stopped asking. I still get calls from people in Elkins, reporters mostly, podcasters. They want interviews. They want to know what I saw, what I felt, how it changed me. I never call back, because the truth is, I don't know what we uncovered. I don't know if it was just bones in the dirt, or something deeper, something that fed on silence, something that latched onto my daughter like a shadow and whispered through bark and root and memory. I do know this. Justice came late, but not clean. We gave names to the bones, but not peace. Not for them, not for us. And sometimes, when the night is very still, I swear I hear it too. The rustle of leaves where there should be none. The faint scrape of roots shifting under concrete. Whispers. Always whispers. Story number 3. People always think guiding hikes is peaceful. Like I spend my days strolling through trees with smiling tourists and chipmunks. But the truth is, when you live close to the mountains, really live in them, you learn how quiet can turn on you. How it starts to feel like something's listening. In 2015, I was 23 and had just started working full-time with a private outfitter outside Boone. I'd done plenty of day hikes and overnights before, but this was my first solo lead on a multi-day trip. For nights, 5 people, through a remote stretch of the Blue Ridge most locals only know by name. Old growth, few cell signals, and a handful of cave systems that even locals didn't mess with. The group was a mix to college kids, a couple from Charlotte in their 30s, and one guy traveling solo. Tim, he was a little older, maybe early 40s, weary and quiet, the kind who answers questions with one-word sentences. Wore boots that had seen some miles. He didn't say much, but I didn't get a weird vibe at first. Sometimes solo travelers just want to be left alone. The first day was uneventful. We hiked into the forest, found a solid spot near a stream, set up camp. Everyone was friendly enough. Tim kept to himself but seemed comfortable. That night, round the fire, he started sketching in a notebook. I asked what he was drawing, trying to be friendly, and he said, "Faces. I see them in the rocks." I laughed, thinking he was being poetic. "Like in the cliffs." "No," he said, not looking up. "They move." Everyone kind of chuckled awkwardly, and the conversation shifted. I wrote it off as just someone trying to be mysterious. On the second day, we passed through an area I knew had some shallow cave mouths. Not tourist caves, just natural rock shelters. Narrow and winding. They weren't on the map I gave clients, and we didn't plan to go inside. Just skirt the area on the way to our next site. That night, Tim didn't show up for dinner. I checked the tents, walked a loop around camp. No sign of him. His bag was still in his tent, but his boots were gone. The couple, Nina and Dan, thought he might have gone to relieve himself, but even after an hour, nothing. I searched deeper into the woods with a flashlight while the others stayed put. I found his flashlight tossed near the trail about a quarter mile from camp, still working. No sign of damage, just dropped. That's when I radioed base, told them we had a missing person. They said a ranger would head up the next morning and to keep the group calm and put a marker where I last saw evidence of him. I didn't sleep much that night. In the morning, Nina told me she'd woken up around 3 a.m. and saw someone standing at the edge of camp. She thought it was me, but then realized the figure was too tall and still. Said it looked like they were staring at Tim's empty tent. I asked if she was sure she wasn't dreaming. She insisted she was wide awake. Said what scared her most wasn't the figure, it was the face. Said it didn't look like a face, it looked like stone. That gave me a chill, but I had to keep the group together. The ranger showed up around noon, asked the usual questions. We walked him to where I found the flashlight. He made some notes, called in more support, said we'd stick to the route and they'd sweep the area. That night, things got worse. After we set up camp, one of the college kids, Trevor, started getting jumpy. Said he felt like we were being followed. Kept turning around mid-conversation like he'd heard something behind him. After dinner, he took me aside and said he wanted to cut the trip short. We should go back, he said. There's something out here. I tried to reason with him. Said there were rangers out now. It was safer to stay on course. He just stared at the fire. I think Tim saw it too. Saw what? He hesitated. The man in the rocks. I asked where he heard that. Double quotes. Tim told me the first night. He said there's someone living out here. Someone the mountain chose. Said if you look too long into the cliffs, it looks back. I should have pulled the plug then, but I didn't. Maybe it was pride. Maybe I didn't want to believe that something truly wrong was happening. I told everyone we'd finish the loop in 2 days, and a ranger would escort us from the pickup point. That night, I heard something outside my tent. Not footsteps, dragging, like something being pulled across stone. I waited, holding my breath, then unzipped the flap just an inch. Nothing. But when I got out in the morning, Trevor was gone. We found his boot prints leading toward a cave mouth a 1/4 mile from camp. Same ones I hadn't marked on the map. I told everyone to pack up. We were heading out early. As we started, Nina whispered to me, it was real. I saw it again. The face, no eyes, just stone. I kept us moving fast, skipping the last night's camp. I figured if we hiked hard, we could reach the trailhead before dark. We didn't make it. Around dusk, Dan twisted his ankle on a slope. Couldn't walk. I had to make the call to camp one more night. I helped him wrap it. Tried to reassure everyone. We didn't light a fire, just huddled together. All of us in the same tent. Sometime in the night, I woke up to someone whispering. Not inside, outside. I couldn't make out words, just a slow, wet rasp of breath and broken murmurs. Then the tent shifted, something brushing against it. A shadow passed over us. Nina started crying quietly. I held my breath, and then it stopped. At first light, we packed Dan's gear between us and practically dragged him the last miles. We reached the trailhead just after noon. Rangers were waiting. So were deputies. They'd found Trevor's body inside the cave. He'd been dead less than 24 hours. Multiple stab wounds, defensive wounds on his hands, torn fingernails from clawing at rock. They also found signs that someone had been living deep in that cave system for decades. A full nest of tunnels and chambers, bones, supplies, journals, and a man, or what used to be a man. He was still alive when they pulled him out. Face a twisted mess of scars and calcified growths. Parts of his skin looked like it had fused with mineral deposits. He screamed when they brought him into daylight, like he was being burned. They said the caves collapsed shortly after, trapping parts of the system forever. The journal said he'd arrived in the 1980s, name unknown. He'd been caught in a rock slide, lost his group, and stayed. Wrote that the mountain had chosen him, that its stone face showed him the path to clarity, that the silence gave him purpose. He wrote about watching hikers, learning their routines, luring some, killing others. He called himself the Echo. They never found Tim's body, only his notebook, tucked deep in a chamber filled with sketches of faces, some real, some clearly imagined, melting into stone. One of the last pages just said, "You don't see him, he sees you." Afterward, the authorities sealed the caves permanently. Tour routes were redrawn. My company covered counseling costs, then quietly let me go a month later. I moved to Asheville, got a job in retail. Haven't hiked since. Nina stayed in touch for a while. She and Dan split. But she said she still had dreams. Always the same one, standing in a cave, surrounded by stone, hearing something whisper just beyond the light. I don't blame people for not believing it when I tell the story. It sounds made up, like a movie or some internet creepypasta. But I know what I saw, what I heard. And sometimes, when I close my eyes in a quiet room, I still feel it, the breath behind the silence. The mountain doesn't forget. Story number for you. Ever see something online that haunts you in a way you can't explain? Not because of gore or violence, because of how real it feels. That's what happened with Liv. Her handle was at Livinbound, and she had one of those fast-growing accounts: travel, myths, dark history. She called herself a digital folklorist. Her stuff was polished, sometimes performative, but she had heart. You could tell she cared about the stories she uncovered. She brought life to dusty legends and remote hollers no one ever cared to document. We were friends before the followers. We met in college at WVU, shared a mythology class. While most people parroted facts, Liv dug deep. She once stayed up 3 nights reading through 200-year-old court records to verify a tale about a witch-haunted mill. I did AV Club stuff back then, editing, audio cleaning, so I helped her with her early videos. After graduation, she got big fast: corporate sponsors, travel gear, a fancy camera setup. But she never stopped chasing Appalachian stories. Said, "The land remembers, even if the people forget." Last spring, she texted me about something new. Said she found an old cave outside Morgantown that had a weird local legend tied to it, used by moon shiners during Prohibition, later abandoned after some missing person incidents. She didn't have a name for the legend at first, just a phrase from an old coal miner's notebook: "Feed it skin and it leaves the rest." That was enough for her to start planning a livestream event. I offered to go with her. She turned me down. "The fear's more authentic when it's just me," she said. "Audiences can tell." I didn't like it. She was good, but she'd gotten reckless. Last time she'd nearly fallen through a rotted barn floor in Virginia. But I didn't push it. I just said, "Text me when you're done." She never did. The stream started around 9:30 p.m. She did an intro outside the cave, holding her gimbal, explaining that this was supposedly the den of a creature called the Skin Feeder. I remember her exact words: "No one agrees on what it looks like, but all the stories say the same thing: it leaves bones, not bodies." She gave a nervous little laugh and said, "Let's see if it's hungry tonight." She walked inside. It started out like her usual videos: commentary on the structure, flashlight beam skimming the cave walls, bits of local lore. She mentioned sulfur stains, rusty jugs, an old pulley system, a few bats. Standard fare. There were maybe 4,000 people watching live. The chat was fast and chaotic, mostly people joking or daring her to go deeper. Some were spamming emojis, some calling her brave or stupid. Typical stream energy. About 15 minutes in, she paused. A noise barely audible, like dragging fabric or wet leather. She turned her head slowly, listening. Said, "You guys hear that?" The chat exploded. Some said yes, some no. Some claimed they saw movement. I didn't see anything then, just shadows and rocks. She kept going. About 100 feet in, the tunnel narrowed. She ducked under an old beam and entered a chamber with a sunken floor. That's when things got weird. She aimed the camera at a wall etched with dozens of crude handprints. Some were small, child-sized. Some weren't shaped like any hand I've seen. Too many fingers, or too long, bent wrong. The chat got quieter. Even the trolls. People sensed something was off. Liv whispered, "This isn't in any of the reports I found." Then came the smell. She gagged mid-sentence, said it was like rotting pennies and bleach. "That's not something you fake." You could see her eyes watering. She turned to leave and froze. There was a shape in the tunnel, not in the center of the screen, just on the edge, barely lit by her flashlight. It looked like a person at first, tall, emaciated but wrong. Its skin, or what should have been skin, wasn't there. Just glistening red muscle stretched to tight. Its head was elongated, and above it rose to jagged, branching antlers. Liv backed up, said, "Who's there?" The thing didn't move. She took one step back and it rushed her. The stream blurred, the camera fell, and all you could hear were wet, crunching noises and her scream. not like in movies. It wasn't a horror movie scream. It was broken, primal, like something that came from the deep to fake. Then silence. The stream went black. I called her immediately, straight to voicemail. I called again, then again. I called 911. The cops got there hours later, found her phone deep in the cave, still recording. The screen was cracked, but the last frame it captured showed something dragging her into a side tunnel. You could only see the lower half of it, veins, muscle, no skin. The antlers were still visible. No trace of her was ever found. The official report said animal attack. They brought in cadaver dogs. Nothing. Not a single drop of blood past the first chamber. Her followers exploded with theories, cryptids, government cover-ups, viral marketing. I knew better. I'd seen the raw footage before they yanked it offline. I'd heard her voice crack. I couldn't sleep for weeks. I started researching, not for content, for answers. I found references to something called the skin feeder in oral histories, mostly in backwoods corners of West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. It wasn't a single story, more like a repeating echo, something that lives underground, feeds on flesh but discards skin. Sometimes it takes children, sometimes drifters, always in caves. In one 1923 account, a moonshiner mentioned the red man with elk horns and how he lost 3 cousins to the bone pit. Said they left offerings, strips of deer hide to keep it away. The preacher in that same town called it a spirit of starvation made flesh. Another story from 1961 said it lived in darkness so long it began wearing the bones of the people it ate like trophies. I tracked down one of the last living people from a nearby township. Old man, barely coherent. When I said the word skin feeder, he went pale, said something like, "It don't eat for hunger. It eats 'cause it remembers being empty." I don't know what that meant, but it stuck with me. Liv's disappearance turned into national news for a week. True crime podcasts jumped on it. Internet sleuths made video essays. There were candlelight vigils. Her account was memorialized. And eventually, like everything online, people moved on. But I couldn't. I went back to the cave once. Just once. Not inside. I stood near the entrance, just out of reach of the cold wind that came from within. I played her last video, the parts that remained, and I swear, underneath the noise of her steps, I heard something else, breathing, long and deliberate, like something not used to lungs. Authorities sealed the cave a month later, welded iron across the entrance, posted warning signs, private property, unsafe terrain, whatever. People still go there, teens, thrill seekers, none of them believe it. But I do. And sometimes, late at night, I still get DMs on Liv's old backup account. No profile photo, no name, just messages that say, "Still hungry? No. Skin left, deeper." I try to ignore them, but one message stuck with me more than the rest. "The land remembers," that's what she used to say, and I think the skin feeder remembers her.